places I've seen where they have it's a propane powered can.
I think it was dogs of some sort.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was just amazing. They put 3 or 4, and this guy told me, he said, we haven't seen anything since.
Really?
The other thing geese don't like is tall grass. So
Yeah,
areas
around
that we don't
ponds.
know.
This is
Less
true.
geese.
This
I
is
mean,
true.
handed.
They also
It
don't.
comes back to that.
Yeah.
They also don't like lead poison.
I got 5 o'clock, so
They don't like.
let's get back.
Like,
Just I'm waiting for Peggy to tell me, okay, it's 5 o'clock.
Yeah, we're good.
Whenever you're ready.
Well, let's call this to order. Peggy, how about a roll call?
Sure. Herman,
Oh, present.
Knutson,
Here.
Miller,
Present.
Frisch, Jamison,
Here.
Van Campen.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. That's item 2. Item 3, approval of the June 14th, 2022 minutes. They were distributed last Friday. Any questions, any comments in regards to the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Oh.
You can abstain? Okay, thank you, Phil. Gracious. All in favor, state by saying aye.
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 Opposed, with the same sign. So moved. Thank you very much. We do have an opportunity for public appearances, so Dan, if you want to start. We don't have anybody standing for public appearances, so I will abstain from the guidelines regards to that. So that item 5, reports from the village officer. So if item 5A was regards to administration on updates of the 2023 2032 Parks Capital Improvement Plan and 2023 budget process. There was some great information in the packet regarding some aspect of the planning, so. Yeah. Anything else you want to compliment in regards to them?
No, I mean, like I said in my memo, it's what you guys saw the last time is still intact at the village board. They've been working on the CIP for about 2.5 months now. The only thing that we changed in the park plan was we boosted JC Park Phase 2 from 1.5 to 2.5, and that was after Jeff and I had a conversation about just what we're seeing in the construction environment and inflation, and just being more realistic about what that project might actually look like if we were to do it next year. The only other thing I wanted to mention was we are getting underway with the 2023 budget, so this is our operating budget, and I do plan to provide the draft parks budget to the park board for review at the next meeting.
Any question from the park board members?
Yeah, I have a question in regards to the Oak Street tennis courts. You know, half of that was being funded by a grant. What is the status on that?
We're still waiting for any kind of activity out of the grant. Last time I checked, they kind of said just be patient, and it's one of these things that the trickle down money.
Right.
But I'm hoping to hear something from that in the next month, 2 months.
And then what's the plan if the grant doesn't get awarded for this?
We won't act on
Okay.
on the courts for next year. The village board did approve the pickleball courts, and so that should take the pickleball contingency out of the equation, which is the majority of complaints we get. The courts aren't in great shape, but they're not the worst and everything, so,
Okay.
you know. But yeah, until we can get really, unless the village board says we wanna fund the entire thing, which they could, you know, it depends, so.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Judy?
So the 2.5 million, that includes the new pickleball courts?
No,
No, it does not. So that got moved to Phase 1. So this would be, well, do you want to?
it would be, yeah, the fourth, ball field, it would be the other, playing field, large playing field, the, playground and port place surfacing, for both the adaptive play, the regular play, and then the, adult, we call it kind of an adult flexibility and stretching and
Yeah.
movement kind of equipment and area for older adults, myself included. And then also ideally it would include the lighting for the pickleball and the 4 ball fields. I met today with the engineer that had prepared the drawings for from Rattler Corporation, and have asked him for, knowing the market we're in and the bidding numbers we've seen and what we got on the fields now, what we're expecting for this next year, to kind of help us refine those numbers for the CIP.
Any questions or comments? I think it's awesome that this park board will end up having some potential funds that we can manage and utilize. I think that's great enhancements to the park board.
Yeah.
So I think that's a real plus that's worthwhile. And we certainly see some demand in the dog parks, and so having some money allocated into that aspect of it. We have had some community members come forward in regards to that, so I think those are wonderful things to be included. So thank you in regards to that. Item B regards to updates on the progress of JC Park development, on the status of the Dish Park, with the recent, as well as recent mowing and public feedback. For you, Jim.
Okay, yeah, I'll take those one at a time here. The JC Park redevelopment project, like we said, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, the village board did approve allocating, I believe, $210,000 from the surplus funds that were in the general fund to be allocated, in addition to about $50,000 or $60,000 of donations from the pickleball folks, to include 6 courts as part of phase 1. And so that work has, the tree clearing was done last week, and the redesign of those courts has been completed. I was supposed to receive it today. I'll probably receive it late this afternoon, this evening. And we expect the clearing and grubbing for that to be going on likely this week. The rest of the park is moving along really well. We're right in the middle of, right now, all the electrical conduit being put in for everything. We are putting in all the electrical conduit and everything and the lighting bases, so that we're not turning around, tearing up a park in 2 years. It's kind of neat to see this all. I walked out there today. The fields are graded, rough graded. They've got the under drain installed on all the fields. Just some minor stuff that they still have to do. The sprinklers system is going in today, and well, this week, and going through this week. The well is to be, we expect the well driller to be on site probably tomorrow or the following day. We'll be drilling an irrigation well, which will be a huge asset. I would like to think someday soon maybe we could look at doing a well out at Highlands and Netherwood Park, because that's a very expensive amount of water that we spend every month to keep that irrigated out there on at the playing field. But things are moving ahead. Next thing we'll start to see is some of the topsoil come in and dress up the fields. The fencing will be going in. The the backstops that we have are an upgraded backstop that are kind of a netting system, Dave. You probably know about that a lot more than, it's a nice system. It's a very nice system. That'll be kind of a tensioned netting system. And so those poles are pretty tall, and they'll be going in pretty soon. It's come along nicely. I mean, everything seems to be moving fairly well. The contractor's been doing a nice job. It still looks like a major construction site out there, but I'd say in the next 3 to 4 weeks, you're gonna see a lot of it start to clean up as they get away from the underground work and start doing all the surface type stuff. So I was out there today, and the fresh trench that they had just dug for the electrical conduit, I gotta tell you, the soil is just like the thickest clay you've ever seen, and it's stinky clay. In fact, I was like, man, it smells like a manure pile out here. And so we're gonna be very glad we've invested in a sprinkler system to water the soil, and a under drain system to be able to drain the fields. So it's no surprise. We knew there was bad material out there. Status
So
of,
is it on schedule from what you're looking at from a construction?
I'd say we're generally on schedule. I wouldn't say we are ahead of schedule by any stretch, but, I'd say we're not getting indications from our engineers that they're panicking yet. We will want the fields going in and planted so we get some growing, started in September.
Okay.
And into September and October. And of course, that all will be weather dependent, but we're gonna hope and pray for a good Indian summer and see how it goes. But,
Excellent, thank you.
Dish Park.
Can I go back?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So you're planning to plant those as opposed to sodding them like you did with
It's all,
Townsend
it's all
Eleven?
seeded.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, what was the estimate, like, time of completion of phase one? Again, could you remind me of that? I mean, as far as, both construction timeframe and then, if we have a good growing season, is it let the grass grow all through 2023, or is it maybe playable at that point?
At the earliest we'd see any play would be late, a year from, we've been told it takes about a year.
Yeah.
So if we can get those in September, we might be able to see some fall play, but again, it really depends on how things come in and everything. One of the things that we're really challenged with right now is that our engineer has a very strict but good topsoil specification. And what we're finding is almost all the sources around here are extremely heavy in clay and silt, not surprisingly. Not very conducive towards good growing conditions. And so what they have to do is either remediate that soil with sand, and at last one on the soil that's on site, it would be a 4-to-1 mixture, which is four parts sand to 1 part our soil, and then it doesn't have enough organic in it. So they're looking at alternative ways to do that, but it has definitely been a more challenging part of the project.
And then as far as construction timeframe?
Construction, they should be done with all the major construction this year.
Okay.
There might be some still punch list items going into next year. I think the hardest thing is it's just like anything, keeping people off of it and away from it and that
Sure.
type of stuff. But,
How has that been so far in the most recent past? I know initially it was an issue.
initially it's an issue because there wasn't, once you start tearing up the ground and make it smell like a manure pile, people do stay away from it, which is nice. I think it'll be more challenging when the paths go in and that type of stuff. So we'll just have to, as long as people aren't out there doing damage, it's probably not a big deal. But on the positive note, one of the things that came about was we had, in our design, we had different from what we had agreed with the VFW on what would be the flag arrangement out there. And I'm not sure, there was some miscommunication between, I think Mike and Lisa had worked the deal out with the VFW. I was working with the engineers, we weren't talking to each other, and then when the VFW looked at the plans and said, well, where are all the flagpoles? And so we had to do some kind of designing on the fly and came up with a really nice arrangement, but it went from 3 flagpoles up to 9 flagpoles. So, so what we're gonna have is we're gonna have a center flagpole that's 35 feet, that's an American flag. To either side of it will be 30-foot flagpoles for the POW and the state flag. And then surrounding that will be 6 flags representing the 6 recognized branches of the armed forces. And you're gonna say, I thought there were only 5. There is 6 now, which is the Space Force. That was something that was created under Donald Trump. So there'll be 6 of those. And it's an interesting flag, looks kinda like Star Trek. But
We're
that's,
seeing it.
it's one of those things that we went back and forth on it, and it was like, we better put it in now because
Yeah.
it's better to be, I think, a little more cautious than anything. They're gonna have, and it's gonna look nice. It's gonna have a little larger plaza, and they'll have a plaque out there, and it'll look really sharp. I think with the staggered, the 30-foot tall, or 35-foot main one, 30-foot side ones, and then 25-foot service flags will look really nice. So, park's gonna look great. Parking lots are gonna be nice. It'll be really slick.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
One, you good?
No, I'm good for this one.
Okay. we haven't talked about this in a while, as this progresses and then you get to the scoreboards, you get to all that material stuff to finish it off, is that all Rutler that does all that kind of stuff too, or is that a whole separate?
We've been doing all that. That's all part of this, yeah. So
Okay.
the foul poles are gonna be orange, Oregon orange. The scoreboards will be black, with orange highlights on them. And we're kinda sticking with Oregon orange, which is what we are as a community.
Mhm.
The fence is black vinyl. What else, color-wise? I'm trying to remember, I think the roofs are just plain black for the dugouts structures. Does that sound
Yeah.
right? I think, cause I was looking at orange and he was thinking probably not on that. But that's kind of, what we'll have for the foul poles. The backstop poles will be black. Flag poles will be brushed aluminum.
So you have all that's all bid out already?
Yes,
and
yep,
in
that's all,
okay.
yep, that's all. The only thing that will be, I think, the biggest challenge, and I don't know where it's kept now, but things like drag screens and base, different bases and all of that. And so one of the things that we're including in phase 2 is probably a 30 by 40 foot pole barn shed. And I'm talking simple, nothing fancy, probably not unheated pole barn shed place we can store fertilizer, maybe an ATV with the drag nets, all that type of stuff. I envision we'll probably have a hose trailer because all the infields will be able to be moistened with a quick connect to you know what I mean? So we'll have a trailer you can pull up, quick connect to it, drag the hose out and spray down the infields when you need to. So something like that will be definitely needed, but it was just never part of the original design, and so we wanted to keep it out of there for now.
Okay. The dish park?
Dish Park, so Autumn Ridge Phase 2A began construction about 2 weeks ago. If you've been up in that area, you've probably heard
yes.
them. I heard them this morning, it was right at 7 o'clock, so at least that's when I heard it. But they are making progress with the roadway, and as with their plan is that will be all graded out. I don't know if you've noticed the sidewalk they extended the sidewalk along all the way down to the end. I have had a few questions from some folks in as we call it, the dead presidents area, are you gonna put a crosswalk, are you gonna extend the sidewalk? That's up to the town. So, I'd love to see the town do something with it, but that's up to them and they'll have to kind of make that decision. But the field will be, I honestly probably doubt it will be seeded this year, just with where they are right now, but I don't know. But we'll see how that comes along. Recent mowing forum, nice turnout. I thought there were about 20 some odd people here. My one frustration, there were 2 people that spoke about the village as a global, or as a kind of a global issue, mowing in the village, when talking about what we can do from an environmental standpoint, wear and tear on equipment, and that type of thing, and I really like that. The rest of the people that spoke, it was more not my backyard, what's going on in my backyard, which I wish as a society we'd have a little bigger focus on the village at whole rather than what's just going on in my backyard. And so to me, and everyone, it's like, I don't care what you do rest of the village as long as you keep mowing behind my house, is really what I'm hearing. So maybe we'll get something different in the other forum, but I have had some very nice emails from some folks that have received, I think there's some great suggestions, and I'll be bringing that back. We're probably gonna have a weekend forum coming up here in September, and after I go through that, probably when things slow down a little bit late fall, I'll put together a report, bring that back to the park board and village board for review and
So is
comment.
that really the action item, to gather the community and then combine them, put those together?
Yeah,
in
the
some
action
kind of
item was
perspective?
really, hold some forums, get input from people, and then kind of take all that information. Also, I'll be talking to a few other communities. I mean, they all kind of do different things. When I went through this before, I know, like, I contacted City of Middleton, and City of Middleton said, like, for their drainage ways and waterways and stuff like that, they go, we're lucky if we mow them twice a year. So, we'll get that updated information, and I'll put it together in a nice memo, and we'll see what the boards wanna do.
Okay.
Yeah. Other park projects?
I was gonna, can I ask about the sidewalk out there at the new development along M?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed it just, obviously you said it stops down by the dead presidents because that's the border. What about going north, up to the middle school and
Yeah.
connecting anywhere there? Cause again, there it stops
It stops. Yep.
before it where it hits a couple houses and then
Correct.
hits the golf course.
Correct. So, and we can only kind of do what we can do as developments. I mean, previous developments did not require that,
Mhm.
and that's a sin of the past. So when we don't know, well, we're always pushing for the opportunity when we can do that. Now that the golf course has changed hands, I feel we're in a much better position now than we were a year ago to work with them and possibly extending sidewalk at some time, okay? But we also have to look at when are we going to do County Highway MM, which would be from Wolf Street all the way out to there, to the dead presidents. And that is still, I think, 2026, 2027
years.
in our CIP, where it would be a full rural to urban section or reconstruction along there. That would hopefully incorporate the sidewalk we're talking about. It could be actually tearing it and replacing it. So that's kind of, I mean, we don't have, we did studies a long time ago with the golf course in play. The golf course has even talked to the village about possibly us taking over the tunnel. And if that were the case, that gives us a lot more flexibility for being able to, if we could do that, then we could also work with the golf course to get easements that could possibly extend those sidewalks.
Sure, yeah, I mean, cause it's just one of those things where you see this nice new sidewalk, you're like, hey, that's great, but then you get to the end of it and you go,
Yeah.
well, where can I go?
Yeah, well, right now, they could go, I mean, they could technically, once they cross MM, which I would never advise my kids to do, especially
Not down there.
now down there and lately with everything detoured through there, they could technically get all the way to anywhere in the village totally on sidewalk, once they cross that. It's not a direct route that kids like to take, but they could go up to Pleasant Oak, Autumn Ridge, down to Pleasant Oak, and then down.
Right,
And
yeah.
everything. But, yeah, we're always looking for when those opportunities are, when we can connect Elliott Lane up to, Pleasant Oak. But that is gonna probably, that whole thing will probably be a roundabout right there at Pleasant Oak and MM, and that's another big project,
Sure.
so.
No, I mean, I think it's just good though to be forward thinking on it, which I'm happy to hear
Yep.
that as these projects come up, we're trying to figure out how to connect this because I think we're gonna see a lot more people using them.
Correct, correct. And we're talking with the owner, the new owner, and can't really talk too much about it, but I mean, we're
Mhm.
talking with them on what's the future over there, and I honestly think it's gonna be a positive in the long run for the village.
Okay.
What do you think?
Yep, yeah, I think supportive connections and keeping kids safe, making sure they can get to school, so.
Right.
We'll definitely be bringing that up in future meetings with the developer and see if we can get those bits moved forward in
Mhm.
the schedule.
Yeah.
Great. Any other things?
Well, when did you wanna talk about, Mark, I know you wanted to bring up the hockey stuff. Do you wanna talk about that now?
Bring it up under this report.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay,
Other,
huh?
yeah. This is called other park projects.
Other park projects, right.
did.
So I'm gonna,
Right.
I'm gonna hand this down and then, and pass that around. So, the hockey, it actually rang a bell in my mind. I'm like, I'm pretty sure Matt, our attorney, actually looked at this in a different context. At the time, the question, and when I looked through my file, it refreshed my memory. It was only 3 years ago, so it should have been fresher, but, at the time, the context was, we were getting concerns of people, kids who were out on the rinks, or out on the ponds, playing hockey and setting out goals, and does that bring us some sort of liability? Should we be posting them as caution, skate at your own risk? Do we need to post them? Should we post them closed? All of that type of stuff. And so this really addresses mostly just the recreational immunity and how it affects us as a village. And it really comes down to, as long as we are not sponsoring some event, like charging or organizing sports teams or anything like that, on the ponds, if people want to skate in the middle of winter, it's part of the recreational immunity. It's the same thing as if they want to go down a slide. They understand there's an inherent risk of twisting an ankle or breaking a leg or something like that. Ponds are obviously a little higher risk, and everything. But I think it also, this does address, when we look at things as far as how and what we want to sponsor, or how and what we want to authorize. The more I've thought of it, I still am opposed to putting any of these types of rinks or anything in any stormwater features. The problem always is, and it's great when Jamie and group and everything, they take it down and all that kind of stuff, but we can't always guarantee that happens. And some of the worst storm events on record really come with what we call rain on snow events. Ground's frozen, everything's, and then you get a 8 inches of rain over 2 days or something like that. It not only melts the snow, but it's 100% runoff. And at those times, if a rink's still out there, if they weren't able to get out and take it out, I just think anything in our stormwater basins, whether dry basins or not, should not be allowed. I do support if a group wants to come in and put volunteer efforts towards putting up boards, putting down a liner, and flooding a field. Okay, I did take a phone call from someone in the hockey group, a very long phone call, who was trying to, I asked him, he could come to a park board meeting and talk about it, but, really saying that they feel that hockey has kind of been an overlooked sport in the village. Now that the rink is private, it is like, I don't know, $290 an hour for rink time or something like that. And I'm sure it comes down to a business model. They need a certain amount of money per hour to be able to run the rink and everything like that. But I said, I would be in support if they wanted to come and say that there used to be up in J.C. Park where we flooded it. It was very unsuccessful. I talked to my guys. We never could get the water to hold. And with our changing weather conditions, it's really hard. Usually had them out there at 2 or 3 in the morning. We have a hydrant out there, for that purpose. But if the hockey club would come to us and say, we want to come in, put a liner down there, and put up some boards, and we'll take care of it. But we just need you guys to, I don't know, okay it, or allow us to use the water or whatever. I would suggest that we fully support stuff like that. That's, kind of the community type of thing. But I don't support us as a village going out, putting up the boards, trying to maintain a rink. We'll never make people happy with how the condition of it is. It'll be snowing outside, we're out plowing roads, and there'll be people complaining that the rink isn't clear and that type of stuff. So that's my opinion on it. I mean, it's a good little read from Matt here on recreational immunity and the ponds, but I do think it kind of gives us a little more insight into how that would relate to drainage ponds, drainage ways, or public parks.
I think this does help out, give a clarification, because the other ponds came up as a discussion as well. So,
Right.
even though this was a particular topic, it does some clarification, so there's value
Yeah.
to get some understanding.
I mean, for years, we used to have an old set of goals down, and we'd set them out on a pond, and then we'd have to fish them out in the spring. Not a huge deal, but it's, just something we do. And that's not a big deal. But I think we felt that just putting the goals out there kind of gave some implied, whether it was right or wrong, some implied like it's safe to be out there. And honestly, for my guys, we're not rink preparers, we can get rid of the snow, but we're not out there to, it takes some TLC, and I'm sure not Jamie,
Yeah.
the gentleman that was here, huh?
Matt?
No, actually, Jamie,
Is it?
Yeah.
Not Jamie Bush, but
no. What's his last
Jamie
name?
White.
Jamie White.
Yeah.
It is a Jamie, okay.
I just called
Um,
him Coach White.
Yeah, I'm sure they spend a lot of time out there and
Yeah.
hot water and dragging it across and that type of stuff. But I like to encourage that kind of stuff. I mean, I think it's unique. I mean, if we can do it in the village, but they'd have to do it right.
Okay, any other thoughts or comments? I just, I knew that we had sent it forward and we're gonna take legal action, at least from, asking our legal, and I thought
Yeah.
worthwhile to at least bring it back to the park board, just to understand it, so.
We haven't asked them to update anything on this, but I don't think it's really necessary. I mean, this is a pretty this looks like a pretty expensive document to begin with.
Yeah.
Um,
I can imagine that.
But, yeah.
That's good, I thank you for sharing that. Item 5C, the Community Director Development and the Community Service Coordinator position.
All right, I'll take this one.
It's yours.
So we held our interviews for the new community service coordinator position about 2 weeks ago. We had a great pool of applicants, maybe about 10 applicants, and we interviewed 3 of them, all village residents. So that was exciting to see that we have some qualified folks here in the village that are interested in working for the village, giving back to the community. So those went well, and we just kind of conditionally offered the position today to somebody. She's not accepted yet, but hopefully I can share some more information about that next month, and hopefully, if all goes well with background checks and she accepts the position, we can get her on board in early October. So we'll definitely, once she's on board, have her come to the park board meeting. This would be a meeting that she would be attending, giving regular updates, and be able to take on some of the special projects or research or anything that you all want to have them look into.
So the school district is continuing to doing the scheduling for all the parks for the
For the
village?
time being,
And
right.
for the time being,
Right.
and that the anticipation is that would be moved to the village then?
That's the hope. So hopefully getting them on board this fall, they can kind of learn a bit from what Alex at school district has been doing for us this year, and learn a little bit about their system and figure out if it's something that we want to continue with or have a separate system. Also the fee structure, I know we've talked about a little bit here, but looking at what other communities have and perhaps coming up with a proposed fee structure for reserving fields and shelters, and also kind of cleaning up the way that we have, right now, if somebody wants to have extra tables, picnic tables, trash cans, things like that. It's very clunky. Right now you have to come in or you mail in a check for $20, and then we have to let Public Works know how much stuff, they have to go get it. It's, a lot more than $20 worth of
Oh, yeah.
effort, and it's just kind of inconvenient for the resident reserving it, as well as staff, just to kind of coordinate all of that. So there's got to be a better way, and that'll be one of their first things to tackle, along with a lot of administrative, helping out with elections, taxes, kind of to fill in the gaps as we build out the position. A lot of building relationships and bridges with different community organizations, so probably attending a lot of meetings, having a lot of coffee with folks to kind of get a lay of the land and understand what gaps exist and where the village can step in and help, and work with the chamber too on some special events as well.
Great, that's wonderful. Any questions, comments?
The comment is, I'm excited for it, to see where it goes. I think it's long overdue.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've already heard from a couple departments that they're excited to have this person on board and kind of figure out how we can use them. I think having them kind of be an advocate too for some of our more underserved populations or folks that we don't often hear from at public meetings. So our seniors, people with disabilities, kind of understanding some of their needs. So as we're planning, whether it's park projects or our new, senior center, or we're even working with developers or updating our zoning code, how can we make sure that we're, advocating for and considering some of those different, user groups to make sure that everybody feels welcome and that spaces are accessible and all that.
Wonderful, great.
I think really this next year, key will be a fee system. Especially as we begin to bring on, we've added Highlands and Netherwood Park and a shelter, and we add three additional ball fields, some other playing fields and that type of stuff. I think it's gonna be very important, because those expenses are gonna go up a lot. Our maintenance of those areas and what people's expectations will be for the maintenance of those areas. So, I think that'll be critical.
Right, I think we're one of the only communities, right, in the area that doesn't charge, so.
Right.
There was some research done, Judy and I did a lot of
Mhm.
research on
Yeah.
that, so we'll have to
Oh,
pull
okay.
that back, so.
And people are willing to pay, if they don't have to have it at their house,
Right.
they can have it at a park, they're willing to pay.
$290 an hour.
That might be a hard sell.
That wouldn't be hard, but I still think, it's, even if it just brings in $10,000 or $20,000 a year, with our expenditure restraint that we have, we are not allowed to raise taxes, and everything else is going up, and we're getting choked more and more each year, but we're adding more and more services, so.
But they don't even take their garbage, the Public Works gentleman always comes, gets garbage on Monday morning, and I'm
Yep.
Right,
Or-
it's very
or
convenient.
Saturday night, so I'm sitting there going, wow, what a deal,
Yeah, we offer a pretty good deal,
yeah.
but we're a small town, so we
We should
can,
market that, no.
there's still some nice things of being in a small town
Right.
and not having this.
But
everything's so
they would
rigid.
probably pay, $100 or so,
Right.
so.
Yep, very true. So item 6, communication and miscellaneous business, there are none. If anybody else on the park board has anything that they want to share?
Can I ask about, what are we doing with, soccer? Anything going on with them?
In terms of,
Do they,
Donation?
they haven't come to any meetings or anything lately about, do they want the fields? Do they wanna go out on the west side? Do they wanna be in J.C. Park? What do they wanna do? Does anybody know?
I agree with you. And I brought that up to the gentleman I spoke to the other day. I just kind of said, there's not really been any voice that we've heard. They were wanting to know if what they need to do to have their voices heard is to come to board meetings and flood the audience. And I said that's seemingly kind of one of the ways it's being used right now to.
Well, they've been so aggressive before,
Advance.
and now after COVID, we're hearing nothing, and,
Right.
they're a big group of them, that
900
play.
and some to
Yeah.
1,000 athletes, not all of them, many of them that, I don't know how many percent are village, but, yeah, it's been a surprising kind of thing, because we've not heard much at all.
Has anybody reached out to them, or?
we met with them
Yeah.
spring a few times, kind of with the changes to J.C. Park, and, I don't know if there was, can't remember if there was really much follow-through beyond just coming to the park board meeting in terms
Yeah.
of asking for fields to be included. I think,
Fields.
they've been following a little bit of the, different opinions about the West Side Park and Keller Alpine, and we've kind of, again, we've talked about that's gonna be part of our park, an open space plan update next year, so perhaps, when we get to that point and we know where that's gonna be on the schedule, we'll have some more involvement, hopefully from groups that are interested in, just what all the different possibilities could be out there. But kind of on them, they know the board meetings, park board
Yeah.
meetings, it's all publicly, posted when these meetings are happening, so. But yeah, we haven't heard
It's
from
been
them
surprisingly quiet.
in a little while.
To me too,
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
they were used to be quite aggressive, and,
They were not happy with J.C. Park,
yeah,
but, and we all knew that. They've not contributed to J.C. Park, but, they won't be restricted of using it, as far as I know, I mean, so, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I jump on that real quick? You know, I know the village set aside, or had that vacant land next to the new village hall, and then you acquire, you know, a lease or whatever for across the street by
Yeah.
Yep.
Miller Dental. Have those fields been being
Yeah.
used? I mean, it seems like,
Mhm.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's
it
been
is.
kind of fun to watch. The field across we call it the dentist, across from the
Yeah.
near the dentist field, that's not as well graded, and there's been some
Sure.
ruts. They've used it for some practices. The field next to the future village hall has been used a lot.
Yeah.
And they've got a outhouse and a shed out there that they keep their equipment in.
Sure.
And so I drive by there quite a bit, and I've seen quite a few little tight games. and
right,
practices
yeah, I
going
mean,
on
it's a
out there.
small space, so you can use
Yeah.
it. But I mean, I'm glad that it's being used. I'm glad,
Yeah, I am too.
yeah, I'm glad the village is, you know, accommodating, you know, to that. I mean, obviously understanding what's happening,
Yeah.
you know, here, and is just trying to continue that relationship and try to find something that works.
Yeah, I agree.
Great. Item 7, unfinished business. We're doing a good job. We have none. Maybe more contributed to the staff than us. Either case, moving on to 8, new business and any other discussion or potential action items. So in the packet, there was some information on the Viridian Homes preliminary subdivision plans in the Mary Hill subdivision and the parkland areas. So there's lots of images and a variety of things that were put together in the layout of the plans as well. Do you want to touch on anything more in regards to that?
Yeah, if there's any questions, I can just note that Viridian, I believe, is going to be submitting a preliminary plat and then their zoning approvals for our October planning commission
To the
meeting.
planning
So
commission?
they'd be coming to October park board prior to the village board, kind of looking at that plat and the zoning approvals there. But we did share this plan with the planning commission in, I think, June, conceptually, maybe it was July. But largely in favor. There is a small area, this is not a park, but that, Jeff, you can kind of point out that little
Yeah.
stormwater area, that
Yeah.
triangle that's not a park. There was a couple comments just that it is, looking at opportunities to maybe have a smaller, whether it's a tot lot or small playground area, more on the west side of the neighborhood, closer to the cemetery, just so that littler kids don't have to be traveling quite as far to be getting to a playground. It's also backing up to Rustic Vineyards Park, and so that's great that it's kind of becoming one larger park, but also wanting to make sure that we're sort of, spacing the parks well. So I've encouraged them to just look at opportunities to find some other green space and move some stuff around there. But it's a largely single family. All these numbers here are the widths of the lot, so everywhere from, I think, a 65-foot wide lot to
2-foot
There-
wide lot.
31. The twos are duplexes. And the narrow streets kind of between those orange lots and the orange and purple, that's alley, so they'd be kind of an alley loaded. Probably seen some of their neighborhoods in Fitchburg or elsewhere that have the alley loaded garages, and then similar to what we have at Highlands and Otherwood with some of those cottages that are right across from the park too. So haven't received any approvals yet, and they're still kind of fine tuning the layout, but this is what we've seen so far. So I think you'll be seeing kind of the preliminary plat in October, and then they'll probably be doing the final plat for each phase of the neighborhood, and I haven't seen a map yet to see how the phasing would kind of go. I think they'd start with the park and the stormwater pond, and I have a feeling they kind of work more east to west, but I'm not sure about that, or south to north. But we'll keep you in the loop as we have some more concrete plans to share.
Comments? Bill?
You go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Two things. One is, it appears this butts up against the new school property. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Yep,
Great.
just to the north there.
Perfect. And then, you mentioned the smaller park, and I was just looking at this, 3/4 of an acre parcel where,
Yeah,
looks like the architect or engineer just couldn't squeeze another couple lots out of it. Is that a park then, or?
Stormwater.
So stormwater.
Yep,
This-
that's
No,
that's an
yeah.
existing
No.
kind of low-lying
I don't
area.
know. This is, The two areas I don't like on this is right here and right here.
Show me.
Yeah.
This little island right
Yeah.
here and this.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the areas like behind, I think of like what's behind Kennedy and Nygaard and those areas kind of become problem areas
Right.
sometimes. They're not really parks, they're not really.
So who's
Who
taking care
takes
of it?
care of them and all
was
that
where I
type of
was
stuff.
going with it.
Yeah, and I agree with the plan commission saying, it seems like we've got all this park over here. If you look at here, you can see this is all the park over here and the pond.
Mhm.
I wanna
kinda
be very
heavy on
careful
that
that they should not be, you see how there's this line right here and here for stormwater. I don't count this as a really viable park space, this little wedge here, this little kinda, so I think it's gonna have some tweaking. and-
Yep. Yeah, I will say, what was your first? Oh, the islands.
Yeah,
So one nice thing about Viridian is they always have a professional property management company and a very
that's true.
well-established HOA. So that's something that's upfront when everybody purchases a home. It's well-funded. They've got a good record in the other communities they
Yeah,
work
this is
in.
true.
So they did share, some examples of some of these other areas where they kind of have a bump out to accommodate a curved road, and then they have this area in the middle. Sometimes I think they're used for the mailboxes, the cluster boxes for these new neighborhoods, but those areas are maintained by the HOA, so
Oh.
they're probably gonna be a pain in the butt to plow around, but that's
Right.
a different story.
Different.
So. But the alleys
is
and
true,
things are
yeah.
maintained by the HOA, those would be private drives, so.
Thank you.
I'm glad you brought up the part that, this new park is adjacent to Rustic Vineyards, because that's the first thing that jumped out at me. And I know this development is only, maybe a half mile wide at most, but, with small kids, a half mile can be challenging
Right.
to get to, and I didn't know if the reason for putting this on the east side of the property was to butt it up to Rustic Vineyards, so that way it's easier for Jeff and his crew to maintain the parks, or if it's just, this is where they put it on the plot. I mean, I'd much rather see it on the west side, because there isn't anything there.
I think they saw the challenge of this over here, don't you think? That because this is already stormwater,
Right,
this
kinda
is,
work
Mhm.
around.
we knew stormwater would be over here. I think they felt it was gonna be a little challenging, and this is not a terrible location, but it's not, and it's easier for the neighbors, obviously, back here, if they think they have a park now in their backyard.
Oh yeah, I would much rather have a park in my
Um,
backyard if I lived up there.
The
but-
original, like, when we did the lease concept plan, this was park over here, and if you can kinda see where my little
Mhm.
That kind of
cursor is,
right?
yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, it was but it was more of a hexagon or, kinda area up here. But,
But I can pass forward those comments too, if you all are in agreement with the planning commission about kind of park location, just to, again, challenge them to look at other layout options, so when we get that preliminary plat back, maybe it's a little bit more balanced on both sides of the neighborhood.
I mean, because I look at it, especially what's happening, or what happened over on the west side, you got Bergamot Park up on the hill, and right down the hill, you've got, what is it, Meadowview Park, essentially separated by a park. You have a little park that's in like the prairie grass, off of prairie
Yep.
grass, and then you got Bergamot Park with the big flat area.
yeah.
And, you have two distinct parks
Yes.
right next to each other, and most people don't even realize that it's two parks. There's two play structures,
Yeah.
but it's I didn't know if that was a trend that we're trying to go to, or if it was just happenstance where these were located.
Yeah. I agree, I don't like that either. But
Right.
no, that's not a trend that
Okay.
we're trying to do.
Just one, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, one more thing, I'm pretty sure, but I'm not positive, there's sidewalks throughout this, right?
Right, not shown on this concept.
I-
plan,
Yeah, they
but
are.
I
they
kinda
do.
see them,
Yeah,
there's
they're
side-
kind of under all those little
but, yeah,
green circles.
okay, thank you.
So
Yeah.
sidewalks and street trees would be required, that's new in our requirement.
The trees are.
Yeah, they'd be 5-foot sidewalks
Great.
minimum.
I have one more question. If the park does stay on the east side, I mean, I'm not seeing a connection to Rustic Vineyards. Would there be a connection between the parks?
I think
Um,
they talked about kind of a
That's a good point.
trail connection.
There should be, because they're not showing it right now. There should be, there's a concrete ditch right here.
Mm-hmm.
So it would
Be a little bridge.
behoove them
Bridge or
to
something.
kind of come along, go across this embankment and then over to Rustic Vineyards. So I
Okay.
agree.
Mhm.
That's a good idea.
I'll send those along, thank you.
I know one of their initiatives was to affordable housing. I see this as a pretty concentrated area. I haven't done much in looking at dimensions, but
Mhm.
some of these dimensions I think are quite narrow, and I was kind of curious about how they even lay out to even some places like the Foxborough, how those lot sizes, because when you try to put a home out with a two-car garage and spread it out, some of these are deeper, so it may end up being a little longer, but it could be quite a concentration to have a lot of people in here. And then oftentimes when you have a smaller lot, you're looking for a park, so my experience in being in Colorado, they had really small lots, but they had a lot more parks, and they had community pools and other type of things, so I do think that when Veridian came in and talked about that area that's up by Ridgeview, up in that area, that was one of the pushbacks initially was the lot size. Veridian came in with really small lot size, and those neighbors said, wait a minute, you're gonna back up to my house that's
Yeah.
of such value with such lot size, and so they changed all of that. But I think that's the purpose of the planning commission, so.
Mhm.
Yeah. Greg was having a real hard time with the width of the
31 feet, yeah, I think
Yeah,
we're gonna be going on
tour.
some site tour with
Oh, are they?
with Greg, yeah.
It's kind of interesting, because the pictures that they showed in the Sun Prairie, I'm thinking, that home's not fitting on those.
There were some,
But they got the garage in the back.
I mean,
I've
yeah,
seen
they've got
them in
the
some
alley
prairie.
here.
Yeah, I understand that.
And
Well,
they're
that's the
just
same
not,
by
yeah,
Forest
I don't
Street.
like it either.
I think they're kind of targeting, what, first home buyers?
Oh, yeah.
Right,
And then,
younger
the
family.
this first elevation from
I understand that,
the
yeah.
first
It's
home
like
to the
an
second
alley.
home that they're
And
targeting.
it makes sense, to buy an entry-level house around
Yeah,
here
the
is
carriage style.
400,000.
Yeah,
Who's gonna be
so
able to
some-
afford that, so.
This
you gotta
carriage
do
style
something.
single family is similar to kind of some of these orange lots you're seeing in the middle. So they're really short front yards. You got your alley loaded, your garage is in the back.
Yep.
A lot of them are kind of one room behind another. Shotgun style houses. If you've ever seen those in New Orleans, they're narrower, but they have a full basement. They have a second story, so they're still in the 1,800 to 2,200 square feet of finished space. But yeah, a lot of people. I went to a couple of the open houses over at Highlands and Netherwood. Those houses right across from the park, and just kind of asked the real estate agent, what
Oh, yeah.
types of people are you
Yeah.
seeing come through here, and are people having a hard time with the layout of the lot? And they said no, they think it's great because their yard is the park right across the street, and the village is doing the mowing, so
Right.
Yeah.
it's
That's
low
right.
maintenance and
this is kind of funny.
They don't know how to fix a
yeah,
lawnmower
like an
anyways.
interior
It's
style.
like-
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think they'd be planning something like that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Get to your neighbor's
You have
house.
Your sidewalk, and then you have the public sidewalk here. I like that.
Walking
We'll leave
path.
that up to the
Yeah.
planning commission.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So thanks for those comments. I'll pass those forward. If you think of anything else, feel free to send me an email.
I was just gonna say, I think there's some of these real narrow, common wall lots, or homes up in the new development by the Fitchburg
The
Fire
Terabessa,
Station.
Yep.
I'm
By
sorry,
Hop.
what's the name of it?
up near the new school,
Yep,
Yeah.
Forest Edge.
Forest Edge, yeah.
Yeah,
Up
exactly.
Terabessa is what it's called.
Yeah.
Right. They also have some over by the Hop House off Seminole
Yeah,
Highway.
Right,
Um,
yeah.
I haven't seen it.
And,
that side of
Did
the
you
yeah,
see
by
the
the
solar
church.
we looked at a couple of those actually when we were looking at them.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were nice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, they're
And
nice.
there's, very little to do outside.
Yep.
Don't need
Yeah.
a big lawnmower.
That is
You probably could share a lawnmower with all the neighbors.
Probably, yeah, probably take about an hour, right?
Okay, thank you very much, regards to that. Moving along, item B, schedule for the Parks and Recreation Plan for 5-year update in 2023. So there's some information regards to that in the packet, but also certainly the current plan is up on the website. And so I strongly encourage becoming familiar with that and knowing what that was about. I think it was very educational. I like Judy's perspective is, get familiar with your parks, know your way around. And so,
Go for a tour.
go for a tour on a bike. And so I think that's really valuable to understand it, so you get from the top part to understanding the differentiation. So that really helps us be efficient about understanding the parks.
This is, yes, I wanna just comment, I do follow Facebook, and I follow other social media and stuff. We always see these comments, Oregon needs more parks.
Yeah,
We have 19 parks.
yeah.
You know, and I can tell you how many times I go by them, and they're just marginally used.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, we have a lot of parks, you know, and not perfect, and not
That's
all in the
fine.
right places, and like we said, you know, but we do have a lot of parks, and I would just encourage, I think it's a great idea, encourage people to go out and explore our parks. you
I
know?
found the most rewarding was last winter, there was an event of they hid things in the different parks in different
Oh,
areas.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
ran across a couple, a woman and a child, and she said, this is, because I asked her, because I
Yeah.
think I was actually checking the signs, so for some reason they were falling off or whatever. And it's like, this is great, I'm glad we're doing this. We
Yeah.
got us out in winter, and she said, I've never been to this park.
Right, Thompson Park is one that has been greatly upgraded over the years. No one even knows Maryhill Park exists.
Kinda hidden behind
Or
it.
at the end
The
of,
neighbors do.
What's the one at the end of Lexington? High Meadows,
Yeah, that's
you know? There's a lot of parks that I think people don't really realize that we have, and if you really start driving around, you're like, well, we have a lot of park space.
That is true. So be prepared for that and be familiar. Is there any other things in regards to that?
Did you wanna
Yeah, we'll
share
just,
anything?
we'll just come, as Martin mentioned here, we'll come back, later this year, once we meet with, our planning consultants to kind of get a scope, and we'll review that together, make sure there's, you know, we're gonna be covering everything you're interested in covering, but also a schedule, and kind of figure out how we'll focus on maybe certain types of parks at a time, so if people are interested in, for example, kind of the Learner, West Side, Keller Alpine Meadows, that, you know, that's posted, people know kind of when that's gonna be discussed, and probably kind of small workshops might be at a park. We might do them at park board meetings, just so that we can maybe boost our attendance here and make sure that, you know, it's all noticed for the public and everything, but, so that'll be coming forward. We also did receive a $56,000 grant through the DOT for our first bike and ped study, so we will be kind of doing that. We have a couple years to spend that money, so it might not necessarily be in tandem with the park and rec plan, but it might be a jumping off point, once we get that plan updated, to look at, okay, bike and ped infrastructure, where do connections make sense, kind of get into the nuts and bolts of, you know, what are different routes that could be proposed, or connections for trails that make sense, so, we do have that funding in place though, so I think we've got a few years to
Keep
get
in
that
mind
done.
that what the park board members' involvement would be in regards to that, not necessarily just in these meetings themselves, but what other roles that we may play in that, you know, pulling that information together, so.
At least
Any other
I think,
questions?
I think the idea of, you know, separating those into smaller community input sections, you know, one, you know, for sports or for conservation or just tot lots, stuff like that, I think that's gonna help, because then it's not gonna be overwhelming.
Right.
You know, all this information coming, at least then you can kind of focus on, you know, this section, get real good feedback about those, and then move to the next one.
Yep, yeah, we might look at too, you know, how the current plan is organized, if we wanna kind of separate it out differently, or if that makes sense, then yeah, we've got the whole year to do the planning, it just has to be adopted going into 24, so,
Okay.
yeah.
So
I
it's
think-
nothing we have to rush on, but I mean, it's
No.
definitely something we want
But
to
yeah,
make sure we stay focused on.
bite-sized pieces, and making sure that, yeah, people who are interested in, you know, let's focus on the dog park, or let's focus on, yeah, tot lots and playgrounds, you know, that we get those dates out there to the public, so they know when that'll be discussed.
Sure. You know, Mark, to your point about, or, you know, Judy too, about going and figuring out where these parks are, one of the first things we did when we moved here 11 and a half years ago is I printed out a park list, and I made it a point to take my kids to all the different parks, you know, not just the ones around me, but around the village, just to see, okay, what do I like, what don't I like, and, you know, there's some we went back to a lot.
Yeah.
It's something new for the kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, beautiful, wonderful. Item 8C, any future meetings and assignments, so I don't think there's any assignments, I'm not assigning any, but looking for the next meeting date, which typically is the second Tuesday of the month.
That should be the 13th, I think, of September.
Any objections from anybody? Can't think of any. Okay, let's go for that. Call for an adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second,
Judy, okay. All in favor, state by saying aye.
Hi.
aye.
Opposed, same sign. So moved. Thank you much, all.
Thank you.
Actually, I found out that you don't even have to adjourn if you get all your meeting work done.